Namaste, Swagatam. There are 30 million people of Indian origin, POIs, spread across 189 countries today, from Mauritius, Fiji, Suriname, Trinidad, Tobago, to Malaysia, Japan, Brazil, and of course, the US, UK, Europe, and Australia. How does the diaspora connect with Bharat? How do they keep the emotional bonds alive? What are the challenges? And how does each community circumvent these? The Student's Handbook of History of Indian Diaspora by Professor Dr. Neerja Gupta Ji, VC of Gujarat University, is a good starter for those keen on this subject. Meanwhile, let us speak with Professor Anand Singh Ji to know more about diaspora Hindus in South Africa. Professor Anand Singh Ji is a third generation South African Indian, a retired academic, and political anthropologist, currently a research professor in the School of Social Sciences. He has conducted extensive research and published extensively on Indian diaspora, international migration, and Hindutva, more than 100 articles. His books include A Hindutva Perspective for Alternative Global Ideology, Demise of the Isms. About South Africa, its first known ethnic group were the Khoisan, demeaningly referred during colonial times as Bushmen and Hottentots. It first became a Union territory in 1910, made up of just four provinces: Natal, Cape, Orange Free State, and Transvaal. Presently, it is made up of nine provinces, each representing a specific African ethnic linguistic group from there. Apartheid was introduced in 1949. White hegemony met its demise in 1994. Presently, South Africa is governed by a slightly weakened ANC led coalition government. Namaste, Anand Ji. Welcome, Swagatam. We are very happy to have you here. Thank you for making time. We have a few questions for you.
Sure.
So, my first question, Anand Ji, when Indians think of South Africa, they remember Gandhiji. How has his legacy affected the Hindus living there today?
Gandhiji, as you know, is a world-renowned figure, often becoming a beacon of hope in many countries through his non-violent approach to political problems. But within South Africa, he's been revered for quite a while. It continues to carry some currency between us and the rest of the world, because there is often the saying that India gave us Gandhi and we gave back to you a Mahatma. But on the other hand, Gandhiji is no longer as known and popular as the current prime minister is today. So I think with historical times, things are changing.
True. Thank you. And when was it that the first Indians first came to South Africa? And how many were there approximately? Where did they land? Was it to build the railways and roads? Or I'm thinking it's not the plantations, unlike the Caribbean or the West Indies.
Yeah, it's an important question because, it was the railways and roads are the issues that came afterwards. In the 19th century, sugar had become renowned as an important source of energy. And it was also very widely distributed from the tropical areas and the subtropical areas, which is South Africa, to earn the colonists tons of money. So Indians were brought on the 4th of November 1860, first and foremost as agriculturalists, to grow sugarcane. That was the first reason.
So they were plantation workers. So they were brought as plantation workers.
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so. Yes. And so many of them started as sugarcane farmers. They did so well that they actually shocked the colonists in that in 1859 to 1860, the harvest was something like 25,000 tons. But when the first lot of Indians came, which were no less than 300, no more than 350. They produce 4 times that amount of sugar.
Goodness.
So from 25,000 tons, they produced 100,000 tons in less than a year.
So they're more hardworking? Is that what it is?
They were more loyal and dedicated workers.
From UP and Bihar? Where did they come from?
They especially came, I think, at that stage from Madras.
Oh, from Tamil Nadu.
From Madras and Kolkata.
Okay.
So many of them, however, were from UP and Bihar when they left Kolkata. The rest of them were from Tamil Nadu and the surrounding provinces in the south. So South Africa, like Malaysia, has a distinction of having more South Indians than North Indians.
True.
Unlike the Caribbean islands.
Yes.
And of course, in places like Europe and the United States, there are probably more North Indians than South Indians. But in Malaysia,
yes.
and Malaysia and South Africa, there are more South Indians.
So, since your ancestry is from Bharat, what were your feelings for India before you came here, Professor Anand? How did you imagine it to be? And when was the first time you actually came to India? And did it match your expectations?
Yes. Well, it didn't really match my expectations because, I'll surprise you. I'm 68 years old now. And I first came to India in 1974.
Oh, a lot has changed. Okay.
A lot has changed. And I come to India at least once every 15 to 20 months.
How wonderful. Okay.
And I will continue. Now, to answer your question, India has been special to me for numerous reasons. Largely because South Africa was declared under the apartheid government as a Christian country. So many people of Indian origin who converted to Christianity used to try to undermine us, continue to pick us out in a way that made us feel inferior.
The Indians, you mean, who converted? Not
the
just
Indians who converted, and they made the Hindus feel inferior. And then we had to feel, we also, over and above that, as people of Indian origin, we had this double-edged sword of having to be discriminated against by whites, by coloreds, that is people of mixed descent, and to a lesser extent by Africans during apartheid. I did not know, having gone through that at that time in my very early years in my life, that I was actually being politicized. So to that extent, I realized that I loved my parents, I loved my family. I didn't know how to say it then, but I also appreciated all of the rituals and what came from India. But I did not have the vocabulary for it at that young stage of my life.
Of course.
2 things that actually instigated me in school. And that was from Indian Christian teachers who made very derogatory remarks about Hindus.
They do it here also. Yeah.
Right? And that actually instigated me. I hated those teachers, but I also thank them now. Because they gave me my identity. It forced me to look inward.
Absolutely.
And it forced me to think, what is it that these people are actually so afraid of that they have to continuously pick us out for?
Exactly.
And today, when I actually understand Sanatana Dharma a little better, I wouldn't say much better, a little better, it has an even greater sense of appreciation within me. And that's what I will continue to abide by, as well as defend, as well as I possibly can.
Thank you so much. And that brings me to the next question of, for you, would you then conflate, and was it synonymous for you, Bharat and Sanatana Dharma? And not just for the Hindus, but how would the other, like you said, a lot of people converted, how other people of Indian descent, if they were Christians or Muslim, how would they look at Bharat and how would Hindus look at Bharat?
Okay, if this question is directed to me, can I ask you that? Is it directed to me?
Yes,
Then I'm
please.
going to
For
give you an
now,
honest answer.
yes, yes.
And that honest answer is not liked by many people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't care, because I consider India, Bharat, ideally to be a Hindu majority state. It
Yes.
is the only country in the world that is a homeland to Hindus. Pakistan, East and West, now with Pakistan and Bangladesh, were created for Muslims. I got nothing against Muslims as human beings. I respect them as human beings. Religion comes afterwards, but it was created for them. India, while it was not created as a religious state, nonetheless must be respected as a Hindu majoritarian state, even if I am not resident in that country.
Yes.
That is my position, largely because there are huge differences between the missionary religions that have their origins in the Middle East,
Yes.
each one fighting against each other, and both of them trying to convert India, or the majority of the people in Bharat, to make it their major trophy.
Yes.
I can only say one thing: God forbid the day it happens.
We'll not let it happen. And thanks to people around the globe, the Hindus around the globe, we'll make sure there's awareness and that doesn't happen. Thank you for saying that aloud, Professor Anand. Have you been to India recently, since you come very regularly? Have you been to Mahakumbh? Were you able to come for any yatras?
I have been to the Mahakumbh in 2000.
Okay. So once is enough. I think you've done that. So
I've done that.
yes.
I can't say that I understood it well enough. At that time, there were 70 million people that attended. This time, it would have been more challenging to me because more than 6 crore people have attended.
Yes. Yes.
But that is, for me, a demonstration of the unity that Hindus can produce together for the sake of common purpose.
True. But what was your impression when you first, not just the Kumbh, but your first visit when you said 1974? Where was it to? Where is your hometown and where did you come to in India for the first time? And how was it? What was your experience?
From the time that Jamna Singh, my Aja, my paternal grandfather, came to South Africa in 1908, his presence here after having married my Aji has produced something like 2,200 offsprings,
Wow.
together with children, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and of course, through marriage, all the additional. But I am the only one, as far as I know, that actually visited my ancestral village in Tuglapur,
Where is that?
in which I think it falls now in Uttarakhand, but it used to be part of Uttar Pradesh.
Okay. So you are a Pahadi.
I don't know the finer distinctions here. Okay, remember, I am now completely anglicized.
Are you from like the hill area of Uttarakhand, the hilly areas?
It probably is. It
The village
probably
was on
is.
the hills, then you're a Pahadi. All right. So, but that is wonderful that among all of them, you did make it to your village. And what did you feel? Because growing up, so I would definitely want to know about your growing up years in South Africa as a Hindu, but also when you came here, what was the reception like and what did you feel about India? Was there some kind of catharsis, some kind of a resolution to your desires over the years to want to visit? Was there any kind of a closure?
Well, it was more a sense of opening than
That's
closure.
beautifully said.
Because I made good contact with them. I was glad to have seen them have their resources, land, cattle,
Yes.
tractors, and whatever. And one of the photographs that they had hanging on the wall was the closest resemblance I have to my father's father here in Durban. before we actually reached the home that we were looking for, it was absolute coincidence when one of the people who joined me, and she was from Udaipur, she came to Durban, I hosted her, and then she had the courtesy of actually guiding me through, because I don't speak Hindi very well, if at all. And people had realized in that village somebody did come to the colony of Natal, the British colony of Natal. And they pointed us out to that house. But prior to us reaching that house, a number of high school children or secondary school children were going home. And especially the young girls who were riding bicycles were the most well-mannered children I have seen in the world.
In the 70s. This was the 70s.
No. I'm talking about 2016.
Oh.
I only went to I didn't go there in 1974.
Okay.
Not in the first place. No. I went there only 10 years ago.
And you're saying they're very well mannered?
They were the most well-mannered girls I've ever seen. It broke my heart to actually see that. But straight away, I had an experience or several experiences of school children in California some years ago when I was there. And the bus driver slammed the door, closed, and started shouting at the students, at the school children, "Don't kick the door. Don't kick the door." And then he drove away. He didn't allow them to come into the bus. And here were these children riding bicycles. Some of the boys said namaste. Others walked past us, but very respectfully. But the girls riding bicycles, all of them, one after another, made me feel very uncomfortable, because we don't even have this with Indian girls here in South Africa, or Indian boys for that matter. Why should the girls only be doing this? Boys too. And each one of them, while riding bicycle, namaste sir, it was amazing. So almost immediately that somewhat brought up, conjured up within me a sense of belonging to that area, because they were so well mannered. It was unbelievable. Then we met the family and everything went pretty smoothly. I am in contact with them and it's going well.
That is such a beautiful story. And if ever I go to Uttarakhand, I will ask you and go by the village, and it'll be wonderful to make that connect also. It's a beautiful land. It's Dev Bhumi, so I would love to go.
Sure.
Professor Singh, how does a South African Hindu keep the civilizational memory alive? How did all of you keep it alive? Did you build temples? What was it that you were doing? And for generations, you're a third generation Hindu. How did this, this continuum happen? Because it's very easy to break that civilizational memory in an alien land. What did you do?
Yes, good question, because, the colonists worked the Indian indentured laborers to the bone, cunningly and very exploitatively. They whipped them when they didn't work. That's why indentured labor was nothing less than slavery. But the one thing that many of those indentured laborers had done, if not almost all of them, was that they carried the Ramayana, the Tirukkural, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. And every Sunday afternoon, when they had an hour or two break, they met under the trees. And they had their satsangs under the trees. And then gradually, when indentured labor contracts were over, they took over some generally unproductive land. And they started growing fresh produce, mainly vegetables, from generally unproductive land, which is near where Gandhiji had actually built his ashram.
Okay.
Right? It's an area called Inanda.
Inanda.
And then Indians were growing from there, putting their vegetables into baskets, putting them on top of their heads, and carrying them from house to house, selling them. And that actually saw the beginning of racism against Indians from the whites.
Because they were doing well economically for themselves?
Because they started eroding the support base of the small white entrepreneur. And that's for the beginning of the racism that started, which, in a manner of speaking, but partially so, culminating in Gandhiji's arrival to South Africa.
Okay, thank you for
Okay?
that.
And
Wow. It's an
so,
important historical fact that we wouldn't know, but for you. Thank you for that. Thank you for
yes.
sharing.
So
Yeah.
I've written quite a few papers on the South African Indian diaspora, and that's why I know a bit of it.
Is
And
there
then
a way
Indian
to
South,
link those? Sorry, is there a way to link those papers in the YouTube channel if they are open for public? We could even put those one or two papers as links in the YouTube description. If that
yes,
is
I think if you just do a Google, a South Africa or Google on SA History Online,
okay.
South Africa History Online,
Okay.
it'll pick up, and
It'll
most of those papers are there.
Okay. Thank you.
So that was one aspect of it. Then the British, when the Indians first came and they saw two things about the British, and I always tease my white white friends around here. You can try to discriminate against the Indians as much as you want to, but when the next war Britain has to fight, they'll be going to Darjeeling, to Rajasthan, to Punjab, to Maharashtra, looking
Yes.
for people to come and beef up the the British military.
Yes. The
That's what they will
Gorkhas
be
and the
doing.
Marathas and the Rajputs and Sikhs and all the
But in the
regiments.
meanwhile, the BBC will be depending upon Islamic money to downgrade the progress that India is actually making presently.
Yes. Yes. Do the
So,
youngsters feel that pride, Anand Ji? Do the youngsters also feel that pride about, how you feel the pride? I can sense it in the way you're speaking to me, and then you're giving me insights. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners or viewers later will find a lot of what they can hold on to, given that you are in South Africa and you're such a proud Sanatani. Do the youngsters in South Africa feel that?
I believe that there is a tremendous resurgence, but not the best kind of leadership among the Hindus. Okay, so we, in a sense, reorientating ourselves. But sadly, many of the vulnerable under and working class Indians have fallen prey to the missionary conversion mafia. Many of them are actually getting tons of money from American evangelical societies,
Yes.
especially the Joshua Group. Okay, and they very active in India as well.
Yes. They have
I
the
know.
2020 window. They have to, they have this whole
Yes,
formula.
and a township, an Indian-dominated township, constructed for 250,000 people, has something like 2,000 churches run by Indians. This is also, on the one hand, many of them are actually taking this as a form of survival.
Yes, it's happened in Andhra, the coastal belt of Andhra, which has beautiful temples. And they start off a church even if they're not Christians. And then they start converting by lure of money and promise of jobs and school admissions. And you will see when you go to Antarvedi, which is a beautiful Narsimha temple on the coast of Andhra Pradesh, there are so many, these statues of Pieta, and then
Yeah.
churches and a huge contrast from our very joyous understanding of who we are as people to being very sorrowful. So there's no, we draw rangolis, kolam, mungu outside the houses. So if you see, you don't see that in any house because it just erodes not just the religion, but the whole culture is gone. So there's no culture of putting flowers in your
Precisely.
hair or any toran or putting that, floor designs. So it's actually quite sad to see. And I'm sorry to hear that it happens in South Africa also on such a large scale. But are there any temples and are you allowed to build temples maybe in your parents' generation or the early Indians who came? Apart from the text that they had and they met under the tree to recite them and do bhajans or singing in groups or chanting, when did you first start building temples, if at all? And do the pujaris conduct the rituals as in India?
Yes. Hindus started building temples almost from the time they came here, in the sense that within 10 years,
Hmm.
They started constructing temples within the properties they were living, but that was for their own personal domestic use. Then communities started getting together and building their temples. So we have a number of temples that go back more than 100 years. Uh, there's quite a few temples around here that's still very strong and functional. But since the 1940s, a young man by the name of Dhanagopal Naidu, who was a follower of Swami Vivekananda from a very early age of 9 or 10, created a small group of leaders who came together with him to understand Swami Vivekananda, and onto him, or from him onto Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And at the age of around 20, the community raised funds and sent him to Belur Math.
Okay.
And the proviso, though, was that you go there, spend the time that you require, but you got to come back for this
Yes.
particular population here. Now, the regulations in the Ramakrishna Math and Mission is that you cannot choose to go where you want to.
Yes. They send you. They post you where
They will send you. And because although he was actually given a mantra and initiated,
Diksha. Okay.
they gave him his Diksha mantra and they initiated him, but he spent a lot of time at in Rishikesh with Swami Purushottananda at the cave, which was Sri Ramji's guru's cave.
Vashishta cave. Yes, at the Vashishta.
Vashishta Goa. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
So, yes, he spent a lot of time at the Vashishta Goa, and he walked from there to Lake Manasarwar and the Kailash Mountains.
Kailash, okay. Kedar and Badri, and beyond that, Manasarwar.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
walked
when
all the way.
he walked all the way barefoot, by the way. He did make his own slippers on the way, and they broke. And he was confronted on one of the occasions by a bear. So they both stood and stared at each other, and he didn't know which way to run because on the left-hand side, there was nothing but a steep slope, laden with snow. And the bear stood and stared at him, and he stood and stared at the bear, but eventually it ran away. So that somewhat saved him. And then he immediately managed to reach Lake Manasarwar, and the way in which he described it was magnificent. And then round about 2000, I was called by Swami Sharda Prabhananda of the Ramakrishna Mission to write a book on him.
Oh, so there is a book on him. I was about to ask you. I'd love to read about him.
So I wrote an autobiography of Swami Nishchalananda. So Dhanagopal Naidu became Swami Nishchalananda.
Okay.
And he introduced the Ramakrishna Mission here.
Okay.
Or the Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Sri Sharda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda. So the Ramakrishna Center in South Africa now is very big.
In Durban?
In Durban. Throughout the country, it's all over. It's in the major cities of the country.
Wonderful.
And subsequent to that, the Divine Life Society came. Then, of course, the Chinmaya Mission is around. And then the Sai movement came in the 1970s. And then the ISKCON also started building up in the 1970s. So now what some people call the Neo-Hindu movement, which many of us don't always appreciate as a Neo-Hindu, because there's nothing new about what is unchangeable.
It's Sanatana. Yes.
It's Sanatana. Okay. So, what I'm saying is that apart from the temples, the ashram organizations from India are now sprouting in South Africa and have consolidated as well.
Wonderful. So it's like the US and the UK. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. You have devotees from all the racial groups. And there's no such thing. The good thing about the ashrams, though, is that they are a melting pot for all of the linguistic groups,
True.
and for all. There's no credence, no respect for caste. So all of that is actually dealt with through the philosophies of the gurus that actually started these organizations.
True. Very true. So I was saying it's very similar to the US, UK, or Australia, where you have the temples, the traditional temples, and it's run by, again, there are South Indian temples or there are North Indian temples, different regional groups and communities. At the same time, there are also these ashram groups which help people to mingle with each other, because the temples might be only for certain regional groups. They follow certain practices.
The
Or
temples are linguistically based, you see.
Yes, yes. And the practices are accordingly. But
Yes.
the ashram groups, as you mentioned very rightly, they're a melting pot not just of the Indian languages or groups, but also from people from maybe the native or the host country and abroad. So they're very interesting. It's a very interesting spread of Sanatana Dharma, which I'm happy to hear that happens in South Africa also. But moving
Yes.
to academics, which is your stronghold, Professor, I would like to know, you were also colonized by the Dutch and the English, the British. So, what has happened to the curriculum? What is any attempt being made to decolonize it, like we have in India right now? We are starting to with NEP, or other attempts are being made. Maybe not as much as most people would like to, but the steps are being taken. So, is it the same in South Africa?
To decolonize education.
Ji.
You see, that word or that concept is being bandied about throughout South Africa
Okay.
in all the institutions, but nobody knows what it means. Because nobody has a sense of direction that people of Bharat actually have. And I'm not saying that it is so unilineal in Bharat that everybody agrees with one another. Please, I recognize the diversity. I know that there is this anti-decolonization clique
Quite a
stemming
strong.
from a whole range of people there, because I follow Indian politics quite closely. That's why I was able to write on Hindutva. And then you also get those like Jai Sai Deepak and Anand Ranganathan and the others who are writing very extensively, whose
Vikram
books I have. The one who wrote on Savarkar,
Vikram Samatji.
Vikram Sampat. I presented with him at the World Hindu Congress in
Yes.
Bangkok last year,
Yes.
the previous year, right? So,
Yes.
Vikram Sampat, I mean, that's when I got a real good appreciation of Savarkar. And now I can also understand and appreciate even better why Savarkar was put into the cellular jail in the Andaman Islands, but why Nehru was given a beautiful cell with a writing desk and a radio in his cell.
The Girmityas who came, you said, first as agriculture workers, and they worked the railways and the roads. Is there any memoriam, like a museum for them? Is there a memorial made for them, like we have, for example, the death railway, the Burma to Thailand railway that was made? A lot of Indians died, a lot of Tamilians died, and they're planning to make a kind of maybe a museum for them. Any kind of, how do you keep the memory of your ancestors, not just through your stories that you tell your descendants, but is there any museum or a diary or a book or something concrete that the next generation can look back and know their history?
I was part of a group that was actually trying to set up a memorial where the first ship landed in Durban, the city in which I live. And then I got to learn how politicized this entire thing became. There were a number of very opportunistic Indian businessmen and politicians who hijacked the entire thing.
From India or
No, local
the local
here in
Indian?
Durban. We are never short of those kind of people in our communities, as you know. And then you had the African National Congress representatives who promised the money and never gave it. Okay? So that debacle is still going on. Something has been erected,
Okay,
but
there is
not on the scale that we wanted. So it is so negligible that it's actually an insult to us.
true.
But what we do have is a couple of libraries with all the, not all, I mean, with a fair amount of historical data and papers, contributions made by or written by people of Indian origin from here in South Africa. So there is a center here in Durban where one can actually access that library and use it for writing the either journalistic or academically research articles. I've been there several times and whatever. But it doesn't really matter. The important thing is to have that memorial. And
Yes.
still not. It has been going on for decades now, but nothing
Given
has
that
happened.
what you said, that they produced so much, 4 times more than what was happening before, and they participated and helped them in the wars. So, given the contribution, and not just to the plantations, but also roads and railways, one would think that this would have been made long ago. But I wish you all the best, and I hope it happens soon. But coming back to the
Thank you.
books you've written, and the book, especially A Hindutva Perspective for an Alternative Global Ideology, Demise of the Isms. What is it? The title, of course, is explanatory, but a little bit about what it is that you've written, the content. How long did you take to write it, and how was it received in South Africa and around the world?
Okay. I do explain in the book itself that there's a history to this, which goes back to my childhood days, where this continuous provocation from people of other religious groups made me more Hindu and Indian than people would have liked to have seen in me. Okay. And in 2000, just before COVID started, there was a meeting on January 9th, January 11th, the day before the birthday of Swami Vivekananda. A group of people got together to form an alternative to the South African Hindu Mahasabha. And just so happened that while I was sitting in my lounge trying to get some work done, because the new academic year was going to start in February, I got a call from a person of Muslim background. And when I say a person of Muslim background, I'm not saying this, whether you believe me or not, is left to you, whoever is listening to this. But he called me for a purpose. And that was to accuse me of attending a meeting the next day, or wanting to attend a meeting the next day, to set up an RSS cell in South Africa and to set up and to join the BJP cell that was to be created the next day. And of course, that meeting was not going to be dealt with at all. And he wanted to know from me, why am I supporting fascists in India?
And RSS
So I
is
asked
the
him,
world's largest voluntary organization, and it's not fascist, but that's what they say.
and I'm not afraid to say that I actually appreciate the work done by the RSS.
Yes.
I think they're doing marvelous work, and I do believe that they should continue with it. People of a missionary background who want to convert Hindustan should think again, because they're not going to succeed. The truth of the matter is that this person was actually lobbying for the CAA protesters
Yes.
in Shaheen Bagh.
Oh,
That's what he was actually doing.
Oh my goodness.
That's what he was doing.
Ah.
It happened to go back to the calendar and see in 2020 January, the Shaheen Bagh protesters were all out there already starting to provoke the Modi administration. I have no interest.
You don't want to name names?
For now, I'd rather not.
Okay.
Because in the book, I didn't put his name as well, but I did mention this person. Okay. He was of Islamic background. What had actually happened there on February 16th, the Muslims in Durban, some of them had mobilized under a certain professor as well, and then started a march on the Durban beachfront, commenting about the CAA. So whatever happens in Bharat, between Hindus and Muslims filters into South Africa as well.
It's simultaneous, you're saying. Okay.
Yes. And now with social media,
Yes.
news travels very fast. So a group of Muslims with two, very disappointingly, two Indian academics, one of Christian background, one of Hindu background, were part of that. One was a vice chancellor, one was a senior professor from education, who were part of that protest. But I assure you that neither of them knew what that march was all about.
Yes.
They were taking a Sunni Wahhabi line. Because what they want to do in Pakistan is to empty Pakistan of all those who are not Sunni into India.
Yes.
That is I have not read this anywhere. I have not heard anybody from India say this. But my own deductive ideas tells me that they want to send all these Shiites, the Ahmadiyas, the Bohara Ismailiyas, together with the Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, and Parsis. They want to wrap all of them and send them into India. They want to make Pakistan a totally Sunni land. But the truth of the matter is, it's the Sunni themselves that are the most corrupt in Pakistan. And they are responsible for bringing Pakistan down to a near bankrupt state. So they're not going to make any more progress.
Is this also the topic of your current book, Religion, Politics, and War in the 21st Century? And you do have...
I will cover some of that. I certainly will cover some of that. But coming back to your question, I diverted a bit.
Yes, please.
About the book. It was this guy, again, who angered me on that particular day on January 11th. I was not actually going to go for that meeting to form that group. I was going to go to the ashram for Swami Vivekananda's birthday celebration. But I decided, no, I'm going to go for the meeting. And then COVID set in. So I said, the only way to keep my sanity was to try to do some work.
Yes.
To do some work in a way that will allow me to keep my sanity. And then I was going to write about what the Pakistan, to write about the influence of the ISI emanating from Pakistan and trying to consolidate in India. And from that, actually going out throughout the world. It's actually happened because there were protests against the CIA throughout Europe, throughout through North Americas, that is Canada and the USA.
Yes.
Okay, and there were protests here in South Africa.
The toolkit went everywhere. Yes.
Sorry.
The toolkit went everywhere.
The toolkit went everywhere, but you see, anything based on lies will fail. Satyameva Jayati, right? Only the truth will prevail. What happened to all of those people now? Satyameva Jayati is something that I know about simply because when my university, where I did my undergraduate studies, which was an all-Indian university created by the apartheid institution, they had Satyam Eva Jayati as the logo.
Okay. So it has only Indians studying and teaching? So it was separated for
It
Indians.
was separated. If we needed to study in any other university, because our university didn't have those courses, we had to get ministerial permission.
My goodness. This went on to 94 or even beyond?
This went on to maybe 1 or 2 years after. No, it went on to the late 80s. But the Indians in the university fought a lot for the black students. We fought to integrate.
That is wonderful.
And today, there's a lot of discrimination in our universities, where the black students and staff are actually closing the doors for the Indian students.
And why do you think that is?
It's reverse racism.
It is what the whites did to you, to the ancestors when they were making more money on the vegetables. And if the Indians are doing well, that is what you're seeing now. The effect, the consequence is reverse racism.
It's not such a simplistic reversal, though. I must tell you that a lot of successful Indian businessmen are in close collaboration with whites and Africans in actually wrecking and ruining this country. It is not just the African politicians that are doing it. It's whites, who are very powerful economically and who are well connected politically, and a number of Indians who have actually grown to a point where they become extremely influential. And as a result of that, are equally corrupt.
That is very sad to hear.
Right? So that kind of situation there. So I wrote this book wanting to actually criticize Islam. But I subsequently started doing my research, and I started reading about the Joshua Project in India. And then I started looking at the ways in which the United States and European countries continue to try to draw out professional labor from India, but wanted to remain as backward as possible. And I said, but it's not only the Islamists that are actually doing this to Hindustan. It is people from all these backgrounds.
Yes.
Hence, I came across the 4 isms that I do a critique on capitalism and socialism, on on Catholicism and Protestantism, making up Christianity, and Islam and Islamism.
Okay.
So those are the 4 isms.
You've taken on all the big wigs.
Yeah, see, I'm a bit of a small man, so I want to take on all the big people. So only way I can do it.
And your current book is also on that, religion, politics. It's called Religion, Politics and War in the 21st Century. And you have this, you're attracted to tough subjects, and you take on big subjects and topics and fight it out in with words. So can you tell us about this book a little bit?
Yes. You see, the biggest culprits in post-World War II exploitation and disorganization in developing countries are the Americans. Because the colonists from Europe had actually lost their power largely because of their losses in revenue through the war, Second World War. The Americans were not as active in the Second World War. So they had the resources and financial capital to be able to start interfering in the world. But very interestingly, only this morning, I've seen on YouTube that Elon Musk is telling Donald Trump, pull out of NATO and pull out of the United Nations. Because they realize one thing, that with the pace at which China and India are actually becoming so technologically advanced, they cannot have a unilinear leadership in the world. So they're redefining themselves. And the war now is not even going to be so much to remote control missiles. The war is actually going to be around the psychological issues that win the hearts and minds of people.
Yes. The social media, because you can reach anybody anywhere. Yes.
American people, by and large, are peace-loving people. It is the deep state that are the troublemakers. And as much as I know Donald Trump does not have the suaveness of vocabulary like Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, and he has a very crude way of speaking, that's what actually makes him innocent. And that's why I appreciate him. Not because he loves Modi or because he said good things about Hindus. But when you actually do an analysis of what, he was the only politician from North America and from Europe, or may I say, you might use it racially, the only white politician who expressed concern about the number of people who are dying in Ukraine.
And also Bangladesh Hindus.
And he spoke about Bangladeshi Hindus, but he only made a once-off statement. That's not enough. I would like to hear Trump say more about this.
Yes.
He's leaving it to Modi. Many of us are actually getting impatient because we're worried about the Bangladeshi Hindus.
Absolutely.
You know, somehow or the other, just like they've done these evacuations in parts of the Middle East and Africa, we can do an evacuation of the Hindus from Bangladesh as well.
But that is also our land. It is their ancestral land. Hindus belong to what was Bengal once, and the British divided it 1905, and then 47, then 71. So it is the land of the Bengali Hindus. But I understand what you're saying, but it's probably tricky because maybe
See,
many
that's
of them.
fine. But for now, with so many people losing family,
Yes,
I
yes.
when I was in Banaras Hindu University in November,
Ji.
there was a young girl who was from Bangladesh.
Hmm.
I was surprised to see
Hmm.
what affinity she had to Bangladesh.
Hmm.
She said to me, "Sir, I don't want to leave my country.
Amar
I
Shonar
don't.
Bangla. Yes.
Yes, she was Paka Bangladeshi,
Hmm.
but these people are not allowing us to live there. And my
Yes.
mother is alone,
Hmm.
and I'm worried about my mother because there are continuous threats from the Islamists against her life." And
Yes.
she cried 3 times while she was talking to me.
Hmm.
She cried. So I asked, "But then why don't you go up and you Bangladeshi students go and protest outside the parliament
They
in
have
Delhi?"
done a lot. They have protested. They're being just shot and
Hmm.
killed and raped and kidnapped, and so they're fighting a huge.
Yeah, they protested in Bangladesh. I can
Yes.
understand. But the Bangladeshi students, I said,
Here, you mean?
they should,
Oh, okay. You mean in
they
India?
should protest in India itself. They
Hmm.
should build that movement,
Hmm.
right? I know that Modi has heard them,
Yes.
but it's not enough. Because look, you lose a member of your family,
Hmm.
you are finished for life after that.
Thank you, Professor Anand. But I want to end with a question on South Africa itself. Thank you for spending this precious time with us and with your wonderful insights. If somebody wants to come to South Africa, we've heard of the penguins, African penguins on Boulders Beach, and it is so diverse. It's called the Rainbow Nation, and it's physically very spectacular. But we've also heard of the growing crime rate. Does that affect the tourists, and is it affecting the Indian community, the Hindu community in particular?
Well, if you want to come to South Africa, I'll give you a lesson on how to duck the bullets.
Is it that bad?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, you see, there's no doubt that South Africa is a violent country. Um, but even Africans themselves, there is this perception because there's violence here that Africans are bad people. There's just so many of them who are going through the same thing themselves. What people of other racial groups are going through, you know? And the bottom line is when you have bad leadership, you have bad people below them,
Yes.
going all the way down to grassroots level. Okay? So, what is it that's actually important here is that when people want to come to South Africa, the groups that they come through will be well guided and protected. Generally, some people might fall victim to, like in any other big city in the world.
Yes.
Well, what disappoints me about people coming from India
Hmm.
is that they go to Johannesburg and then they go to Cape Town, but they don't come to Durban where most of the Indians live.
Why is that?
That you'll have to ask the Indian travel
Community.
agents.
The
They
travel
don't
agents.
come to, you
Durban.
got Gandhiji's ashram here in Durban. You got all the ashrams and temples here in Durban.
They don't want
You're
that.
going to see, so now you're going to see a concrete jungle in Johannesburg. And then you're going to see, okay, Cape Town is beautiful.
Yes.
It's very beautiful. If you've been to Vancouver, it's something like Vancouver in Canada.
Oh wow. Okay. I
Okay?
haven't been to South Africa, but I'd love to come to South Africa. But okay.
Let me know, and when you come to Durban, you can be my guest. It's not a
Thank you. I
problem.
will come to Durban. I'll make sure I come to Durban.
Please do that, but tell the travel agents as well. Bring the people to Durban. You see, there is the so-called Zulu factor around here.
Okay.
That people say, Zulus are generally violent, this, that, and the other. But it's
They are
not
the
like that at all.
warriors, isn't it? They are warriors.
They're given that warrior status, but the truth of the matter is you can't generalize about people in a way that makes them look unnecessarily violent when they are not. You have that bad element in every community. Okay? This important thing is that Durban is a very beautiful city. We have some of the best beaches in the world,
Okay.
but through bad political leadership at a local level, We our beaches are not always the cleanest nowadays, but generally it is much cleaner than many other places in the world. But our waters are warm, and the waves are like very few actually have in the world. I've been to more than 45 countries in the world, and I can tell you that the Durban waters are the best that I've experienced.
How wonderful. Would love to
It
come
really
and have
is.
a yes.
And when
And
we were fighting, you see, when there was a mass march by the Natal Indian Congress before apartheid ended, then the white policeman came to them and said that this beach is only for whites and you are not allowed into this beach. So the Indian leadership of that march said to the white policeman, okay, we'll walk across the beach, but we'll go into the Indian Ocean.
who was this person? Would you have a name?
It was
Or?
one of the leaders from the Natal Indian Congress, and he was a Muslim doctor. I just forget his name right now. Yeah. He said, no, it's okay. You keep the beach white, but we'll go to the Indian Ocean. Because running through Durban is the Indian Ocean.
Lovely.
Now, the Boulders Beach that you are talking about where there's penguins, that's in Cape Town.
That's where people go to, most of them.
So Durban and Cape Town are 1,800 miles apart or 1,800 kilometers apart.
It's also a big country, so probably, it's difficult for people to make their way there. But I would think if somebody's listening to this, that they include Durban in their itinerary, and that will be a good way for Indians from India, Hindus from India, to mix and mingle with Indians from and Hindus from South Africa, because that is how the people to people connect is very important. The Girmityas and the indentured laborers who went there and their descendants, the ones who've kept Hindu dharma alive despite all odds for so many years, centuries. It should be on the top of the list for Indians when they go to South Africa or any of these countries where other Hindus live. I would suggest that we include that. When
That
we
should
visit.
really be an important thing because, I think even the travel agents are not properly advised about this. And, in Durban, you have the North Indian temples, the South Indian temples. Then you have all of the ashrams sprouting up all over the place. You have Buddhist retreats here in Durban and outside Durban. There's so many things to actually see, which are of an Oriental nature as well. It's not just African, it's not just Westernization, or modernized kinds of structures. So it's really important that people get a better appreciation when they come from India.
Thank
Now, every Girmitya group in every country has woven out their own uniqueness in the places that they've settled. And our cuisines have adapted from Indian spicy cooking, but to reflect our local tastes. Like in the Caribbean islands, like in Trinidad, they have dalpuri and brinjal
Yes.
going out of fashion. And it is something that was coming out of my ears when I was there. Because dalpuri and brinjal is not my favorites. Okay, but now that I'm growing older, I appreciate it a little more. Then when you come to South Africa, there is a particular way in which dalpuri is made.
Okay.
But now it is only served after the wedding ceremony.
It's become a ritualized item.
It's
and
become
no
a
longer-
ritualized item.
Okay.
And sometimes when people want to make something different, the women have some time, and it's unfortunately, it is something that's actually being lost. Like idli and dosa, the South Indian types of food, like idli, dosa, and the coconut chutneys and the rest of it. We've lost all of that altogether.
Oh, so what do people eat there, the Indians?
So we've woven up our own cuisine style. Okay, we've learned from the British to eat a lot of meat, but mainly chicken, fish, and lamb. All right, not beef or pork.
Correct.
All right, and then it's generally red, mainly the Tamilian style of red inviting curry, mutton curry, lamb curry with busting potatoes and those kinds of things. And then we've created our own kind of attraction here in Durban called the bunny chow.
Bani cha, I've heard of it.
Right?
Yes.
Where you take a loaf of bread, you dig out, you cut it in the center, you dig out the white of the bread, you load it with curry, dip the white into some gravy, and then cover it up again, and either eaten by one person himself or herself, or eaten communally. Okay? If you go to Mauritius, dal puris are also very popular there, but it's made also very differently from Trinidad and South Africa. And it's eaten very differently, with chutneys and the rest of it that you least expect. So then you go to Malaysia. There in Malaysia, you'll actually find some of the Tamil dishes, South Indian dishes, that you wouldn't find in South Africa. Because we created our own kinds of cuisine. Yeah.
Yes.
You see, so biryani, for instance, has become almost a national dish. Biryani or pulao. It's one of the national dishes in South Africa.
Okay.
And then, of course, in South Africa, we refer to people of Indian origin as Indians.
Okay.
But if you talk to people from one of these Caribbean islands,
Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago, like Suriname or
Suriname.
Yeah.
Suriname. Thank you. Now, Suriname, anybody who's from India is Hindustani. But here in South Africa, Hindustani is reference to people who speak Hindi. You see, even Muslims, I was surprised when I was in Amsterdam once, and a guy took me to a restaurant, and he said, no, there's a Hindustani guy that's running the restaurant. And he introduced me to this guy with a Muslim name. So I didn't know how to react, because we never refer to a Muslim here in South Africa as Hindustani.
Oh.
It's an offense.
Oh.
It's an offense. And here in South Africa, even Muslims of Indian origin are now increasingly identifying with Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. They won't tell you that their history and that they come from India. Not many of them, not all of them, but many of them would. You see, so that distinctive identity that adapted to the ecological surroundings wherever they settle is something that needs to be identified. And maybe you can take out snippets from all others that you've interviewed with respect to identity and see how it actually manifests in terms of marriage relations, cuisine, and educational and entrepreneurship and those kinds of things.
Or we could have another conversation with you itself. And because you're an anthropologist and you've traveled, you would know. We would love to do that again, Professor Singh. But thank you so much for being here and spending the time with us and explaining many facets and aspects of South Africa that we are not aware of. So thank you once again, and I hope you have a wonderful 2025. Namaste.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.